Usually, when we talk about some kind of mechanical failure, right, there's this expectation of a visible cause and effect.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like, think of a car, you turn the key, the engine sputters, and you just pop the hood. And the mechanic just points and says, there it is, broken spark plug.
Or a corroded battery terminal, right?
Exactly. It's incredibly satisfying because the problem is physical. It's binary. The machine is either broken or it's not.
And we crave that. I mean, we crave that kind of tangibility in almost every aspect of our lives.
We really do.
When something doesn't work, we just want to be able to point to the broken component, replace it, and then, move on. The diagnostic process in that mechanical world is inherently comforting because it relies on predictable laws of physics.
Right. But then you step into the world of human ambition and behavior, and suddenly that whole diagnostic machine is completely useless.
Yeah, the rules change entirely.
You look under the hood of your own mind, and instead of a broken spark plug, you're just staring into this murky, contradictory swamp of good intentions and honestly baffling inaction.
Swamp is the perfect word for it, actually.
Right. We are looking at a behavioral landscape that actively defies logic. Especially for anyone who is listening to this right now, maybe you're sitting at your desk staring at a blinking cursor.
Or avoiding a gym bag that's been packed since Tuesday.
Exactly. I've been there. We are tackling a deeply relatable and incredibly frustrating paradox today. We're looking at a source video essay from the YouTube channel Unfuck Everything, and it's all about the experience of being, well, for lack of a better term, lazy but ambitious.
It's a psychological profile that almost feels like a cruel joke of evolution, to be honest.
Seriously.
I mean, how can a person possess immense, genuine ambition, hold a crystal clear vision of what they want their life to look like, and yet
simultaneously exhibit daily behaviors that look to the outside world and to themselves like sheer apathy?
Exactly. It's maddening.
That's the gap we are exploring today. We're doing a deep dive into an extensive psychological breakdown of why people with massive goals just freeze up.
And the mission here is to completely deconstruct this behavior.
Right. Not as a moral failing, not as a character flaw or a lack of discipline, but as a deeply ingrained biological pattern. The goal is to equip you with the structural tools to finally bridge that massive canyon between your imagination and reality. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the most crucial framing we need to establish right now, the lens through which we just have to view this entire phenomenon, is that if you resonate with this paradox, your inaction has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of intelligence.
Oh, that's huge to hear.
It really is. It is not a deficit of talent. What we are analyzing is brain architecture.
Okay, brain architecture.
Right. We are talking about the deeply empowering truth that the neural pathways and behavioral loops that have been built inside your mind over years, well, they can be systematically dismantled and rebuilt.
So it's not a permanent condition?
Not at all. You are operating on a specific set of biological instructions that were designed for an ancient environment, and we can rewrite how you respond to them.
I am stuck on this idea of the daily reality of this mindset because the source material maps out what I can only call the anatomy of a wasted day.
Oh, yes. It's a very specific cycle.
And it is painfully accurate. It's this incredibly predictable cycle. It starts in the morning, you wake up, and the optimism isn't fake.
Right. It feels completely real.
The intentions are pure. You tell yourself, today's the day I tackle the business plan. Today, I write the chapter. You can practically feel the momentum before your feet even hit the floor.
And what's fascinating here is that the ambition in that morning moment is neurologically authentic.
Wait, really? It's authentic?
Oh, absolutely. You are experiencing a wash of dopamine related to anticipation and forward thinking.
Okay, so it's actual brain chemistry.
Yes. Your prefrontal cortex is actively simulating a successful future. And that simulation feels good. It feels rewarding. But
then we introduce the variable of execution.
Exactly. The execution phase is where it all falls apart.
That's where the collision happens, because you sit down to start and there's a tiny bit of friction. Like you don't know the exact first sentence to write.
Just a microscopic amount of uncertainty.
Right. So you pick up your phone, just for a second. You scroll the timeline, maybe check a couple of emails.
And those 3 minutes metastasize into an hour.
Half the morning evaporates.
Yeah.
Just gone. So you deploy the rationalization. I need a fresh start. I'll eat lunch, get my blood sugar up, and I'll dive in at 1:0 p.m.
Which is a very logical sounding excuse.
Right. But then 1:0 p.m. comes, you feel lethargic. Now the rationalization shifts to, I'm not at my best. I'll do it tomorrow when I have more energy.
It's just punting the problem to future you.
Exactly. And then the hammer drops at 11:0 p.m. You are lying in the dark and you are consumed by this toxic, heavy guilt.
The midnight guilt.
Yeah, you make wild, desperate promises for the next day just to soothe yourself to sleep, and the loop just resets.
We really have to analyze the profound emotional and psychological toll of that specific nighttime phase.
It's so painful.
It is. Because it is far more destructive than just a loss of productivity. What is happening in the dark, when you are beating yourself up over another wasted day, is an active, aggressive erosion of self-trust.
Erosion of self-trust. Wow.
Right. Your self-concept is highly neuroplastic. It changes based on the evidence you provide it every single day.
Okay, so every day is a data point.
Precisely. Every single night you go to sleep feeling that guilt. You are feeding your subconscious a data point that basically says, I cannot be trusted to do what I say I will do.
Oh, man, that is brutal.
You are reinforcing a neural pathway that equates your own promises with failure, ultimately cementing the belief that your dreams are frivolous and you are incapable of realizing them.
You're basically building a psychological allergy to your own ambition.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like sitting in the driver's seat of a high-performance sports car. The engine is a V8, the tank is full, you know exactly where the destination is.
Everything is ready to go.
But for some inexplicable reason, your arm feels made of lead. You sit in the driveway watching the neighbors back out and go to work, and you just cannot bring yourself to turn the key.
It's a complete paralysis.
But I have a really hard time buying the evolutionary premise here.
Okay, how so?
Well, if my brain's ultimate goal is survival, wouldn't achieving my goal like launching a profitable business, getting a promotion, or getting in shape, wouldn't that provide significantly more security and resources?
You would think so, logically.
Right. Why would my brain fight against the very thing that guarantees a higher quality of life? Isn't human nature fundamentally driven by achievement?
I mean, that is the logical assumption of the prefrontal cortex, but it represents a profound misunderstanding of how the primitive brain assesses value.
Okay, tell me more.
We have to separate the conscious mind from the ancient hardware operating beneath the surface. Your conscious mind understands the abstract concept of a profitable business.
Yeah.
Or long-term health.
Right. I know I want those things.
But the primitive brain, specifically regions like the amygdala and the basal ganglia, it does not care about your startup pitch deck.
It doesn't care at all.
It has absolutely no concept of a retirement portfolio. It cares about immediate caloric conservation and immediate physical safety.
So the brain is operating on a timeline of minutes and hours, while the mind is operating on a timeline of years.
Precisely. You are the host of a massive biological mismatch.
A mismatch.
Yeah. One part of you is a visionary, simulating a thriving future 5 years down the line. The other part of you is a hunter-gatherer, terrified of burning 500 calories on a task that does not yield a piece of fruit or a piece of meat by sundown.
Wow. So it's literally trying to save energy.
The primitive brain views the effort required for your abstract goals as a massive, dangerous expenditure of energy with no guaranteed return.
No guaranteed return. That's the kicker.
Exactly. It actively seeks to protect you from the danger of this energetic waste by slamming the brakes.
I want to look closer at what the brain actually classifies as a threat in this context. Because to me, a threat is a physical danger.
Like a tiger in the bushes.
Right. It's a car running a red light while I'm in the crosswalk. But we're saying the brain sees the act of, like, outlining a spreadsheet as a biological threat. How does that leap happen?
The mechanism here is uncertainty.
Uncertainty. Okay.
In our evolutionary past, uncertainty was a very reliable proxy for death.
Oh, wow.
If you were unsure what was rustling in the bushes, or unsure if a new territory had food, exploring that uncertainty was a massive risk. You could die.
Better to just stay put.
Fast forward to today. Pursuing a big, ambitious goal is the definition of uncertainty.
That makes total sense.
You don't know if the business will succeed. You don't know if the novel will be published. You face the very real possibility of failure and social rejection.
Which feels terrible.
And in a tribal setting, social rejection meant exile and death. So when you sit down to work on your goal, the brain registers the uncertainty, the potential for social rejection, and the immediate caloric cost. And it sounds a physiological alarm.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Modern life has completely weaponized our own survival instincts against us.
It really has.
The brain is treating the mental friction of writing a difficult email the exact same way it would treat a predator stalking us in the savannah.
It's the same stress response.
It triggers an avoidance response. It floods the system with a subtle anxiety that basically says, danger, retreat to safety.
And we have to define what safety means in the modern environment.
Okay, what does it mean?
Safety doesn't mean hiding in a cave anymore. Safety means inaction. It means retreating to the known, the predictable, the low-energy state.
That couch.
Exactly. When you think about your big goals, your brain does the biological math. It sees high effort, high uncertainty, and high risk of failure, and it initiates an emergency override to stop you from proceeding.
Which completely shatters the traditional narrative around this behavior. I mean, this isn't laziness.
Not at all.
Society slaps the label of laziness on it. We internalize it as a character defect, but it is literally survival mode.
It's an evolutionary feature, not a bug.
If you are stuck in this loop, your brain isn't broken or weak. It is executing its protective programming flawlessly. It is successfully keeping you safe from the perceived danger of hard work and unpredictable outcomes.
Reframing this from a moral failing to an overactive biological defense mechanism is really the only way to escape the cycle.
Why is that reframe so important?
Because when you call it laziness, you invite shame, and shame paralyzes you further. When you recognize it as a miscalibrated survival instinct, you can begin to engineer a solution.
You can work with it instead of against it.
Right. But the immediate question we have to answer is, if the brain is successfully steering us away from the threat of our goals, where's the escape hatch? How is it redirecting that energy?
That brings us to the dopamine hijack.
Yes, the hijack.
When the primitive brain senses the threat of your ambition, it needs an off-ramp to diffuse the tension. It needs to point you toward an environment where the outcome is entirely predictable and the effort is practically zero.
The path of least resistance.
Right. So it says, hey, don't look at the blank page. Look at the glowing rectangle in your pocket. Open a social media app. Play a video game. And the moment you take that off-ramp, you get a hit of dopamine.
Now, the role of dopamine here is often oversimplified merely as a pleasure chemical. Like it just makes you feel good.
Right. That's what everyone says.
But dopamine is fundamentally a learning molecule. It's the brain's way of marking an event as biologically significant and worth repeating.
Oh, I see.
When you feel the intense, uncomfortable anxiety of facing your difficult project and you choose to look at your phone instead, the anxiety temporarily vanishes.
Oh, right. You get distracted.
That sudden drop in stress, coupled with the novelty of the phone screen, triggers a massive release of dopamine.
It's an escape hatch that immediately rewards you for abandoning ship.
And that reward creates a devastatingly efficient feedback loop. Through associative learning, the brain notes the sequence of events.
Which is what?
Goal equals anxiety. Phone equals relief.
Wow. Goal equals anxiety. Phone equals relief.
Therefore, avoiding the goal is the optimal survival strategy. Every single time you procrastinate by scrolling, you are not just taking a passive break. You're actively laying down myelin on the neural pathways of avoidance.
You're practicing avoiding your work.
Yes, you are biologically hardwiring a habit that equates fleeing from your dreams with feeling good.
I think about it like someone who is desperately starving for nutrients, right? But instead of cooking a complex meal that takes an hour to prepare, they just grab a fistful of ultra-processed candy.
A perfect analogy.
You feel the deep existential hunger to achieve something meaningful with your life. But the friction of doing the work is just too high, so you grab the cheap dopamine hit.
The candy.
Yeah. The sugar rush masks the hunger pangs for about 10 minutes. The anxiety goes away. But you are secretly, fundamentally starving your potential to death.
It's a slow starvation.
Your brain thinks it's protecting you from the short-term pain of effort, but it is bankrupting your long-term fulfillment.
The tragedy of the survival mind is its absolute blindness to the future. It operates strictly in the present tense.
It only cares about right now.
It will always trade long-term thriving for short-term relief. And this loops back to the guilt you feel at night.
Right, the midnight guilt.
That midnight guilt is the conscious, forward-thinking prefrontal cortex grieving the loss of the future it desires, while the primitive brain is comfortably shutting down, entirely satisfied that it kept you safe from the terrifying danger of writing your business plan.
So the cheap dopamine hit, the phone, the video games, the endless scrolling, that's the obvious form of avoidance. We generally know we're procrastinating when we're 3 hours deep into watching people restore old furniture on YouTube.
Usually, yes.
But the source material highlights another, much more insidious way we avoid our goals. And it's dangerous specifically because it looks feels and masquerades as hard work.
It wears a very good disguise.
It really does. It's perfectionism.
Perfectionism is perhaps the most successfully rebranded form of self-sabotage in modern psychology.
Rebranded. I love that.
We have dressed it up as a virtue. We say, I'm a perfectionist in job interviews, implying that we simply possess an elite, uncompromising standard of excellence.
Like it's a humble brag.
Exactly. But when you peel back the psychological layers, perfectionism has nothing to do with high standards.
Perfect never arrives. The feeling of being ready is a myth.
A total myth.
Waiting for the ideal conditions, the right desk, the right software, the right amount of free time, is a stalling tactic. Perfectionism is just raw, unadulterated fear wearing a tuxedo.
Fear in a tuxedo.
Yeah.
And borrow that. It is the ultimate socially acceptable excuse for inaction, because the logic is airtight.
How so?
If the conditions are never perfect, you can never start. And if you never start, you never expose yourself to the possibility of failure.
Ah, there it is.
Let's look at the actual fear driving this. What perfectionism truly protects you from is the devastating discovery that your baseline abilities might not be as extraordinary as you believe they are.
That is incredibly confronting. You're saying we prefer the fantasy of our potential over the reality of our current skill set.
Absolutely. As long as you remain in the fantasy phase, endlessly researching, outlining, designing logos for a company that doesn't exist, plotting a novel you haven't written a word of, your idea remains flawless.
It's perfect in your head.
Right. In your head, you are a best-selling author. You are a disruptive CEO. You are safe in the theoretical realm where external judgment cannot touch you.
But then you have to actually do it.
And actually executing the idea forces it out of the flawless vacuum of your mind and into the messy, objective reality of the real world, where it might turn out to be deeply mediocre.
But wait, how does that square with everything we're taught about vision?
What do you mean?
Well, we are constantly told to visualize success, to have a crystal clear, immaculate picture of what we want to build.
Are you saying that holding on to a brilliant, detailed vision of the final product is actually the exact mechanism keeping us paralyzed?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the vision is a compass, but perfectionism turns it into a bludgeon.
Okay, break that down for me.
Having the destination in mind is necessary. You need to know where you're going. The paralysis occurs when you refuse to accept anything less than the flawless execution of that vision on your very first attempt.
Which is impossible.
Exactly. The gap between your pristine imagination and your clumsy, amateurish first draft is incredibly uncomfortable. Perfectionism is looking at that gap, feeling the discomfort of being a beginner, and choosing to retreat back into the fantasy rather than endure the awkwardness of the learning curve.
It's the delusion that step 1 should look like step 100.
Yes.
And that fundamentally breaks how we view failure. We treat failure and success as opposites on a spectrum.
Right, but they aren't. No. Inaction is the true opposite of success. Failure is just a data acquisition mechanism.
I like that. Data acquisition.
Right. When you attempt something and it falls flat, you generate empirical data about what doesn't work. When you sit frozen waiting for perfect conditions, you learn nothing. You just age.
We have to completely normalize the necessity of bad first attempts. Momentum, even if it is clunky, inefficient, and slightly in the wrong direction, is infinitely more valuable than stagnant perfection.
So true.
You can steer a moving vehicle even if it's sputtering. You cannot steer a car that is parked in the driveway because the driver is afraid of scratching the paint.
There's a brutal reality check here that anyone listening needs to absorb. The people who are currently living the exact life you are dreaming of, the people you admire and envy, have failed more times than you have even attempted to start.
That is a statistical fact.
They didn't achieve their position by flawlessly executing a master plan. They got there by aggressively pushing through the friction of imperfect action. They embarrassed themselves, they released bad versions of their work, and they corrected course in real time.
Which naturally leads us to examine the specific methods we use to pretend we are taking action.
Because we love to pretend.
We really do.
Yeah.
When we are trapped in this perfectionism loop, we rarely just sit staring at a wall. We actively convince ourselves we are preparing.
Right.
And the most common modern mechanism for this fake preparation is the consumption of productivity content.
Oh, man. This is where it gets incredibly meta and honestly is slightly uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
Because we are talking about the illusion of learning. You watch videos on how to optimize your morning routine. You read articles on the habits of highly effective CEOs. You listen to deep dives analyzing the psychology of motivation.
It feels incredibly productive.
It does. Your brain is firing, you're taking notes, you feel a surge of inspiration. But the source material is completely unsparing here. Consuming content about doing the work is not doing the work.
No, it's not.
It is a highly sophisticated form of avoidance.
It's avoidance camouflaged as ambition.
Camouflaged ambition.
The brain is incredibly clever. It knows that scrolling social media produces guilt. So it finds a loophole.
Productivity loophole.
Exactly. It realizes that if you consume information about your goal, you can trigger a dopamine release associated with progress without actually expending the energy or taking the risk of execution.
You feel like you did something.
Your brain gets the chemical reward of gaining knowledge while remaining perfectly safe from the vulnerability of creation.
I have to point out the elephant in the room right now.
Let's do it.
By listening to us break down the psychology of why you aren't doing your work, you might literally be using our voices to procrastinate on the work you should be doing at this exact second.
It is entirely possible.
We are actively part of the trap. You might be using this deep dive to drown out the silence of your own resistance.
The irony is unavoidable, but it highlights exactly how insidious the trap is. However, we have to distinguish between diagnosis and treatment.
Okay, what's the difference here?
Understanding the neurological and psychological mechanics, which is what we are providing right now, is the required first step. You cannot dismantle a trap you cannot see.
True.
But the fatal error is believing that the diagnosis is the cure. The trap is convincing yourself that if you just consume one more book, listen to one more analysis, find one more workflow hack, you will finally feel ready to start.
Let me be absolutely clear to everyone listening. You do not need more information.
You really don't.
You don't need a new Notion template. You don't need to optimize your sleep stack anymore. You have enough data. You already know what the next step is. You are just terrified to take it.
So if we strip away the illusion of preparation, and we accept that we cannot rely on the mythological feeling of being ready, we are left with a massive structural problem.
What's the problem?
How do you actually force a brain that is hardwired for comfort to voluntarily choose the friction of difficult work?
That is the core question, and the answer requires a complete rejection of the most popular concept in the self-help industry: willpower.
Willpower is deeply misunderstood.
The strategy is systems over willpower, because motivation is a scam. It's a weather pattern.
A weather pattern, I like that.
Yeah, sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's a hurricane. If your strategy for success relies on waking up feeling deeply inspired and bursting with energy to tackle hard things, you have engineered a system guaranteed to fail.
Because you are never going to consistently feel like
We
it.
were.
Waiting for motivation is effectively handing the steering wheel over to your primitive brain's mood fluctuations.
Which we know is a terrible idea.
The neurological reality of discipline is that it is not a personality trait you were born with.
Wait, really? It's not innate.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It is a physical, biological pathway that you build. And you build it specifically by taking action when you feel resistance.
Oh, so the resistance is required?
Yes. When your brain screams, "This is uncomfortable, let's stop," and you force yourself to write one more sentence anyway, you are engaging in neuroplasticity.
What's the actual biological transaction happening in that moment of friction? Like, in the brain?
You are actively weakening the synaptic weight of the avoidance pathway.
Okay.
Simultaneously, you are strengthening the prefrontal cortex's ability to override the amygdala. You are teaching your nervous system that the physical sensation of effort is not a threat to your biological survival.
You're proving to your brain that you won't die.
Exactly. Every time you push through the resistance, you myelinate that pathway, making it slightly easier to override the fear response the next time. Discipline is just a highly trained neural circuit.
But the mistake everyone makes is trying to build that circuit by deadlifting 500 pounds on the first day.
Which just leads to injury.
Yeah.
Or burnout.
Right. The perfectionism kicks in and says, okay, to overcome my laziness, I am going to work for 6 hours straight today with 0 breaks. That is a setup for failure. It's an impossible cognitive load.
Completely impossible.
The strategy for rewiring the brain is to start so absurdly small that the primitive brain doesn't even register it as a threat.
The magnitude of the action is irrelevant in the beginning. The consistency of the initiation is everything.
Just starting.
You have to lower the barrier to entry until it is almost comical. Tell yourself you will write for exactly 5 minutes, or you will write one single paragraph.
Or just put on your gym shoes.
Put on your gym shoes, walk to the end of the driveway, and come back.
Yeah.
By making the task microscopic, you bypass the amygdala's threat detection.
It sneaks under the radar.
Right. The brain doesn't perceive a 5-minute task as a massive caloric drain, so it allows you to start. And once you start, physics takes over. An object in motion tends to stay in motion.
I think of willpower as a tiny, highly degradable battery in your brain.
Like a smartphone battery on 5%.
Yeah, exactly. Every time you have to resist an urge resisting checking your phone, resisting opening a new tab, resisting going to the kitchen for a snack, you drain a percentage of that battery. By 10:0 a.m., the battery is dead, and the primitive brain takes over completely.
You're running on empty.
If you are relying on that battery to fight off a world designed by thousands of engineers to steal your attention, you will lose. Every time.
Which is why the architecture of your environment must replace the reliance on your internal willpower. We refer to this as choice architecture.
Choice architecture.
You have to design a physical and digital environment where the default action, the easiest possible thing to do, is the productive behavior, and the destructive behavior requires significant friction.
It's the electrical grid analogy. If you plug into a well-designed grid, you don't need the willpower battery.
Right.
If your phone is sitting on the desk next to your keyboard, you don't have a discipline problem, you have an environmental design problem. The dopamine pull of the phone is biologically stronger than your desire to write a report.
It's unfair competition.
You have to physically remove the stimulus. Put the phone in a different room. Install a website blocker that scrambles your passwords for social media during work hours.
By doing that, you are systematically eliminating decision fatigue.
Hmm.
Every single distraction you remove is a micro decision you no longer have to process.
You're saving brain juice.
Exactly. If your phone is in another room, you don't have to spend cognitive energy constantly deciding not to look at it. You are preserving your prefrontal cortex's limited bandwidth for the actual deep work. You must construct an environment where slacking off requires more physical effort than working.
But let's ground this in reality for a second. You can build the perfect system. You can have the website blockers, the phone in the other room, a clean desk, and a microscopic 5-minute goal.
Sure.
But eventually the system will break down. You will have a day where you bypass the blockers, go get your phone, and doom scroll on the couch for 4 hours. The failure is statistically guaranteed.
It is unavoidable. And the moment of failure is the exact juncture where ambitious people permanently derail.
Why is that moment so critical?
Because they interpret a single behavioral failure as a definitive judgment on their identity. The trajectory of your progress is never linear. It is a volatile chart of forward momentum and regression.
Ups and downs.
How you metabolize the regression dictates whether you succeed or spiral.
So what does this all mean? This brings us to what I believe is the most radically misunderstood tool in the entire behavioral toolkit: self-compassion.
Oh, this is a big one.
The immediate reaction to the phrase self-compassion is usually revulsion. We think it means being soft. We think it means giving ourselves a free pass to be lazy.
We've been taught to be hard on ourselves.
Right. We've been culturally brainwashed to believe that the only way to change behavior is through punitive discipline, that if we punish ourselves with enough guilt and shame, we will eventually act right.
The neuroscience of shame completely contradicts that cultural narrative.
Really, completely.
Completely. Shame and guilt are highly stressful cognitive states. When you beat yourself up for wasting a day, your brain releases cortisol. It activates the sympathetic nervous system.
Fight or flight.
Right. It creates a state of internal biological distress. And what does the primitive brain do when it is in distress?
It looks for an escape.
It frantically seeks a dopamine release to self-soothe.
Oh my God. It drives you right back to the phone.
Yes.
The guilt literally triggers the exact avoidance behavior you are angry at yourself for doing. It is a flawlessly vicious cycle.
It's a self-feeding loop of misery.
Beating yourself up in bed at night isn't a noble display of high standards. It is a biologically destructive form of self-sabotage that drains the precise emotional energy you need to attempt the work again tomorrow.
This raises an important question. So we must approach forgiveness not as a moral indulgence, but as a strategic necessity.
Strategic necessity. I like that. How do you implement strategic self-compassion?
It requires a profound level of cognitive distancing. It means looking at your failure to execute objectively without attaching it to your inherent worth.
Okay, give me an example.
You have to observe the failure the way a scientist observes a failed experiment. You say, the parameters were wrong, the reaction didn't hold, we reset the variables tomorrow.
It's just clinical, neutral.
Exactly.
You literally have to speak to yourself with the same grace you would instinctively offer a friend.
That's the golden rule here.
If your best friend called you in tears and said, I completely blew off my work today, I'm a total fraud, I'm going to fail at everything, you wouldn't say, you're right, you are intrinsically lazy and you should probably just give up.
Of course not.
You would de-escalate the panic. You would say, hey, it was a bad Tuesday, it happens to everyone, go to sleep, wake up tomorrow, and just do one tiny thing. You have to apply that exact de-escalation protocol to your own brain.
This leads to the ultimate cognitive shift required to break the paradox. We have to violently decouple your behavior from your identity.
Say more about that.
Lazy is an adjective that describes a temporary behavioral state. It is not a noun that defines your essence.
Let that distinction sink in, because it is the key that unlocks the cage. If you have been trapped in the intention-guilt cycle for years, lazy feels like a terminal diagnosis.
It feels permanent.
It feels like your genetic code. But it's not.
You are a highly capable individual with genuine ambitions, currently running a maladaptive biological program.
Just a bad program.
Your brain has simply learned an inefficient way of processing the friction of effort. That is all. You are not a lazy person. You are a person experiencing a state of avoidance.
And states can be interrupted.
Exactly. Programs can be rewritten through the combination of environmental design, microscopic action, and aggressive self-compassion.
Action without self-compassion will shatter you. The first time you fail, the shame will cause you to quit entirely.
It's too brittle.
But ambition without action is just an ego-preserving fantasy. You need the friction of both. You need the rigid discipline to manipulate your environment and force the 5 minutes of work, and the radical grace to forgive the system when it temporarily crashes.
To synthesize the entire architecture of this deep dive, we began by mapping the agonizing cycle of morning optimism and nighttime guilt, recognizing that it is not a character flaw, but a biological tug-of-war.
We expose the primitive brain's survival mechanism, understanding that it interprets the uncertainty and effort of your big goals as a literal threat to your life.
And subsequently hijacks your attention with cheap dopamine to keep you safe.
Right. Then we dismantle the virtue of perfectionism, revealing it as a sophisticated defense mechanism designed to protect your ego from the vulnerability of being a beginner.
We challenge the illusion of productivity content, identifying it as a way to simulate progress without assuming risk.
We threw out the concept of willpower entirely, replacing it with the brutal pragmatism of environmental design and the neurological rewiring of absurdly small, imperfect actions.
And finally, we reframe self-compassion from a soft indulgence into a required strategic tool to break the cortisol loop of shame.
You now possess the blueprint of the machinery holding you back and the exact tools required to dismantle it. But blueprints and tools do not build houses.
No, they don't. You have to swing the hammer.
Which brings us to the final, uncompromising directive. This is the moment of truth. When the audio of this deep dive fades out in a few seconds, the illusion of your productivity ends.
It's over.
Do not click on the next recommended video. Do not open an article summarizing this topic. Do not spend an hour meticulously planning how you are going to implement these systems tomorrow.
I want to leave you with a philosophical perspective that underpins all of this neurological data.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spend an enormous portion of our lives paralyzed by the terrifying possibility that taking action will somehow prove we aren't inherently special. We linger in the fantasy phase to protect the fragile idea of our own untapped genius.
Right.
But consider this. What if the only thing that actually constitutes greatness isn't innate talent at all? What if the true singular mark of a special individual is simply their willingness to be comfortably, embarrassingly mediocre for as long as it takes to become proficient?
Wow.
What if the ability to endure the awkward, messy, unglamorous reality of the beginning is the only real talent that exists?
You don't have to be brilliant today. You just have to be willing to be bad at it and do it anyway. The diagnostic machine in your head isn't broken. It's just running an ancient operating system. But now you have admin access.
You have the passwords now.
You know exactly how the wiring works. Close this app, put the phone in another room, go do one single microscopic, ridiculously small thing that moves you forward right now. We'll be here when you're ready to unpack the next one.